This is Gems with Shom, the deepest conversations in beat digging, music production, and records. If you're new here, welcome. Follow the show and you'll get the stories, techniques, and knowledge that takes years of research to find out on your own. We come correct every week with that raw uncut. For those that know. Welcome to Gems with Shom, a show about beat digging, records, production, and other things. On today's show, we have KON. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
KON has had a fantastic career as a DJ and producer across genres. He's been a part of many group projects as well as worked on his own. He travels the globe as a DJ and has led an incredible life. One of the projects that our listeners might find notable is his work, KON and Amir, on the legendary On Track series. Those mixtapes are really well known in the beat digging community, and me personally had a big influence. So I knew we'd have a great conversation.
All right.
All right, brother. You are from Boston, or at least known to me from Boston.
Yes, sir.
What was around you from a music standpoint growing up?
My parents were both heavily into music. They had me, my mother was a teenager when she had me. My parents split early, but both, were pretty heavily into music. So, I grew up with a lot of weed smoke in the air in my house. My mother, my father was a drummer. He was in a band. I started playing drums at 4. Really at that time, records were, I was just super drawn to. And this was probably, this was in the 70s. So, my father had a Wi-Fi, not a Wi-Fi, a hi-fi setup, and a turntable, amplifier, tape deck, teak, reel to reel, a whole record collection. And he was into everything from Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, B.B. King, various things like that. He went to Woodstock. My mom, she was into, around that time they split up when I was very young. So at that time, disco had become kind of a thing. And she was heavily into it. I mean, she was going out to all the nightclubs with her best friend, who was like my other mother. And they pretty much were going to all of the underground black gay clubs in Boston. And that is where you would hear music that was a little more less mainstream. So from that, you were hearing Crown Heights Affair, Dreaming a Dream, and etc. So at home, when Chic, when that first record came out, that was a massive impact on me. Dance, 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 Yowza, Yowza, Yowzer. She wore that record out. I knew that record by heart. Donna Summer. But also, my mother's taste was a bit more eclectic. And, when the B-52's first record came out, that was in my house. And I was really blown away at how different that record and those songs sounded. She also introduced me to the Pretenders. Just you know, Grace Jones, Ricky Lee Jones, so many records that were just, you know, spanning a diverse range of artists. And her best friend, the other woman that raised me, when we would go to her house, her music, I used to tell my mother her music was different. Her music was Cameo, Tina Marie, Caldera, Donald Byrd, Roy Ayers, you know, Rick James, D Train. And I was just soaking it all up. You know, fast forward, I mean, also at the time, my mother used to take me, this is probably like 1979, I would go to a club called Spinoff, which was on a famous street here in Lansdowne Street in Boston, where all the clubs were. And I was the only little boy in this adult club. So I like to think back on those times as that was my paradise garage. You know, I was 7, 8 years old, roller skating on a Saturday night. My mother knew all the right people, and it was a different time, so she could get me in. And she would literally let me do my thing. You know, at the time, my mom was probably 22, 23. And this was when Michael Jackson Off the Wall was brand new. This was the Crusaders, Street Life. This was Machine, There I Go, But for the Grace of God. This was GQ, Disco Nights. You know, 1980 rolls around. This is George Benson, Give Me the Night. This is Shaka Khan, Do You Love What You Feel? This is all me witnessing this in a club environment as a boy. I had no idea how special that was. I knew it was special, but, you know, looking back, I didn't know then it would impact me in the ways that it did. Flip side, I'd go to see my father on the weekends, and my first concert he took me to was Kiss, 1979. Again, I'm the only little kid there. My father had bought a 1979 Buick Regal, and he had quite the sound system, custom. He put it all in, separates, Jensen coaxial speakers, Blaupunk head deck. He built a rack before they existed to slide his equalizer in and out and disconnect it. I mean, the sound in his car was crazy, and I'd be in that back seat in a cloud of weed smoke, you know, but he's playing everything from the artists I just mentioned, in addition to the Gap Band, in addition to, you know, the Clash, just, you know, Tom Petty, Stevie Nicks, Fleetwood Mac, and I can vividly remember that was at the point, those years were when I started to pay attention to why things sound different on different records, which would be the mix, not just the songs. So my ear was already developing. I wanted to know why I didn't know what it was called at the time, but like why the reverb on a snare had a tail end that did this. On a different song, the drums weren't sounding like that, or why the vocals in the left speaker. All those things, again, you know, my time in the car would be, not to say I wasn't having conversations, but my conversation was with the music, just like my father. And you know, that sound system was on, he had that shit bumping. So Then around 80, 81, my mother met another guy, and that became my stepfather eventually. But he was in a band called Face to Face, and Face to Face they were one of the biggest bands in Boston. And before my mother and before they moved in together and all that, my mother had a bunch of roommates, and my house that I lived in was the who's who of Boston musicians during the early beginning 80s. John Butcher Axis, Spyro Gyro, or Spyro Gyra, Face to Face. Face to Face, their first record, they were one of the first videos on MTV, and their song was called 1098. That was their hit, and that was all produced by Arthur Baker. So I would go to their practice sessions. I was just around tons of musicians. My middle school years, I was into adult music. I wasn't into music kids were into. I was on another level, and I guess for it, I was considered weird. I knew for a kid my age, I knew a lot about music that so in other words, I couldn't really talk to other kids my age about music. I'm having to have conversations about music with adults. But I was into everything. I was into Susie and the Banshees. I mean, I went to go see Bow Wow Wow by myself. I was 9 years old. Double Trouble from Wild Style opened up for them, and I saw that, I was very lucky to get to witness and participate in a lot of that. I saw Al Jarreau. I saw Psychedelic Furs. I saw Duran Duran. I saw Adam and the Ants. I saw John Clemmer, David Sanborn, just a lot of different music, which later on helped me because, I learned that I didn't really do genres. Genres only existed to me so that we could have these conversations. I just did either I like it or I don't. It's either good or bad. And I was into anything that was underground, I guess, or subcultures. I had family in Queens. I would take trips on the weekend to see them and stay with them. And this was in the early to mid 80s. At the time, hip hop was kind of in its early stages. Again, like my mother, shout out her again. She's the one that put me onto Grandmaster Flash. She showed me the message. She went to go see Grandmaster Flash in 82, 83. Whenever the message came out, she went to that concert. She went to the club to see them. So I had parents and parental figures around me who were listening to really dope music. And it resonated with me. And, I'm going to trips to New York, and I'm seeing graffiti. I'm seeing breakdancing in my hood where I grew up. I'm starting to see it. I started to become. I was a b-boy. I started writing in '83. The man that became my stepfather, he was a sign painter by craft, and he was real good. Inadvertently, going with him on jobs, he taught me about letters without, I didn't even realize what I was learning, but he taught me about geometry. He taught me that the letters need to match. He would show me signs you would be traveling around Boston. He'd say, see that sign? There's two S's in that word. One S doesn't look like the other S. That's a bad job. all of that I applied to graffiti, and it helped me. So I'm now in New York, and I'm listening to the radio. I'm listening to WBLS. I'm catching Mr. Magic. Um, I'm catching Marley Marl. I'm catching Shep Pettibone mix shows. I'm catching Red Alert. Um, this is all early 80s, mid 80s, late 80s. And I would come back to Boston with music that just came out. Like literally, like all the world premieres, Coogee Rap, It's a Demo, Ultramagnetics, Sir Ibu, Divine Force, all the Juice Crew stuff, all the Biz Monkey stuff, all the, Eric B and Rakim, all of those records were, it was a time where the world as we know it musically and just culturally, it didn't exist. You had to grow up around it. You had to have access to it. You had to be kind of in it. And that, I would say, those were my my adolescent into my teenage, formative years. I was always collecting records that whole time. Style Wars and Wild Style came out. The scene in Wild Style with flashes in the kitchen. I'm sure a lot of my contemporaries and my peers in my age group, that's the moment. I had been messing with records all that time, but I didn't know what to do until I saw that. And so that was probably 83, 84. And then I asked my grandmother for Christmas. I asked my Nana to get me a mixer, and I got a Radio Shack realistic mixer. And that was the moment that changed my life, and I ended up, high school, 8th grade. I used to run with a lot of kids, graffiti writers meetings, etc. I mean, we used to be 80 to 100 deep. It was a whole movement, and through all that, I met a lot of different people. Music and art really kept me out of trouble. I did get arrested in 8th grade. It was about 15 of us. We went boosting. I was a juvenile, so I was given the choice to take community service or go to trial. If I took the community service, there would be no record. So I did that, and I had to do this after school program. And through that program, I ended up meeting one of my best friends who became my MC. And we met because I met a whole bunch of other people, from that program, and these were all at-risk youth, myself included. Um, you know, I saw his name was Johnny. I saw Johnny drawing characters and stuff, and I said, "Man, you write?" And he goes, "No, I don't write, but I do characters." So I was like, "Well, I write and I DJ." And he was like, "Man, you DJ?" Like, "Yo, I rap." Johnny was levels ahead of MCs in Boston. He was super nice with it, like real good. So that became a thing. He and I. Then I introduced him to one of my boys named Buddha. He introduced me to his boy Osama. We just became a crew. And me, and Johnny all went to the same high school. And these are like my day ones. Johnny ended up, Johnny was murdered in 2011, tragically. So,
Sorry to hear that, brother.
yeah, thank you. That rest in peace to Johnny. And but we did a lot of music, and the point of that is, we went under this crew called Mixed Nuts, MIKSTNUTZ. And, we were definitely, I think, light years ahead of the sound that was coming out of Boston. Stretch and Bobito were killing our demo. We were in talks with Jive. We had several meetings. We were very close to getting signed. There's a lot of unreleased material, but the material's on YouTube. That is on YouTube. Some of that stuff is on my SoundCloud, and this was probably 91, 92, 93, 94. And that really, you could say I started DJing clubs in 91. I graduated 91, and by that time, and I wasn't even interested in going to the prom. I was already doing underground loft parties. I was doing house parties, excuse me, and then I started to do clubs. So, yeah, that's kind of my trajectory up until that point. And I had always was various day jobs. But yeah, I started doing that, and then production really started full on 1990, 91. Maybe one of the first times I went to a studio was with one of my boys that I went to high school with. He goes by Mad Soul. And, throughout time, he's produced a few records that were notable in the 90s. But that was probably like 1990. Yeah, and it's I don't think I really had a choice. I think when you're an artist, whatever the medium is, you just get hit with it. You get hit with that gift, and it's up to you to tap in. And I think I did. I've stayed tapped in.
Yeah. Yeah. You're definitely an artist, and you've led an artist's life. When you described you growing up as a child, basically being exposed to all this, that underground environment is extremely hard to recreate. Like the
Right.
version of that today is dramatically different, right? And also the movements that you were around, you're talking about late stage disco, early stage hip hop, and then the various phases in between. It almost starts blending together when you look back at your career, right? Because we will talk about your mixtapes and all that. I mean, they only came out a few years before you were really getting into it, and maybe you're exposed to it from your parents as well. So it's super unique, and that's why this story is really, really interesting.
Yeah. Again, you don't know it at the time. You're just doing what you do. I'm just a kid growing up in the city. Born and raised in Boston. Dorchester, Roxbury area. I've lived all through different neighborhoods, but this has been, my base. Around that time, I'd say 92, 93, 94. One of my biggest mentors is Boston Bob Gibson. And if you know anything about the Roosevelt shows or that time, Bob was instrumental in having a hand there with some of hip hop's most prolific and groundbreaking albums. He was a record dealer selling to everybody from Q-Tip, Prince B, Lord Finesse, etc. And he was one of the more prominent figures, You know, he broke Stark Reality. He broke, I'm pretty sure, the Giant Drums. He broke Power of Zeus. I mean, um, just countless records. But he taught me a lot, and he used to let me go to his house and just take crates to my house and just say, whatever you want. Just, he trusted me, you know, go through them and bring back what you know, just we'll settle it up. So we always had a good relationship. And fast forward a few years, was on college radio. I heard a mix by DJ Shame, who went up there and he was playing all originals. And this was like, oh shit, like, damn, these are all the samples. And this was before Muro, KON and Amir, Ken Sport, Con Man. It predates Soul Man. It's before all that happened. Shame, for me, I would acknowledge Shame as being the first to do a mix of its kind. That went on to be, I think, Adventures or Traveling in Sample Land or something like that. Shane was an accomplished local DJ. He was nice with it. Fast forward to like 90, beginning in 95, I met Amir at a record store in Boston.
Can I pause you before we get to Amir?
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's a whole story we'll get into together.
All right.
There's so much that you just mentioned that I would love to hear more about.
Okay.
Right? You mentioned Bob Gibson and you mentioned the Roosevelt Record Fair.
Yep.
They're legendary to me. Did you go? And if so, can you describe the experience for all of our listeners who might not have been there?
So at the time, a lot of the times I didn't get to make it to the shows as much as I wanted to. There was another dealer from New Hampshire who was John. He also was one of the premier dealers. There was another dealer named OZ that had a lot of stuff, but people weren't too fond of him. But again, you know, having Bob here, I got, you know, I got the advance.
Yeah.
You know,
Early bird.
yeah, really, without having to always go. So yeah, I mean, and this is, again, the climate there was no internet. There was none of this. You couldn't just download. You couldn't just look it up. There was no who sampled. It was none of that. There was literally none of that. You had to make a lot of mistakes. You had to learn. You had to buy the shitty wrong records. Cover looks dope, but this shit is garbage. Or, you know, you find something unsuspecting on a record that doesn't even look like it's going to have some heat, and it sure enough was like, oh my god, what is this? You know, so I think anyone who was around back then knows that's what it was. And then yeah.
Okay. All right. You know, it's a important event that comes up on this show often, so I just wanted to explore it from your perspective. And I've heard a lot about Bob Gibson in various episodes, I guess people who were around at that time, people on this show. Now, you touched very quickly on all of those important mixtapes that you heard. You pointed out DJ Shame. Respect. I like the way you're kind of showing who came before you was your influence. And then all of those other very important mixtapes.
Yeah.
And let's get back to you meeting Amir, because that's a let's just say, critical moment in my experience of learning about all of this?
Yeah, I mean, that was a very fateful encounter in the best way. Um, I was texting with Amir today. Um, so we met at Biscuit Head Records, which doesn't exist anymore. But shout out DJ Bruno, who's also, you know, a Boston legend, a legendary DJ who used to do a party at at the Loft, and he used to do that with Armand Van Helden, which is another, you know, shout out Armand, who he used to live in Kenmore Square above Planet Records, and I used to run with a crew that was his best boys, so we all overlapped. And this was before he became an international superstar and all this other stuff. So, yeah, Boston, you know, that was the climate at the time. And then, you know, Bruno had the shop, and I was just in there one day, just going through records, and I see this guy. He's going through records, and we just started talking about records, and samples and stuff like this. And it turns out that Shame was his roommate. Turns out that he knew Sean C. He knew Joe Mansfield. He knew the Vinyl Reanimators, because that's who they were. That's the three of them. And we was just so shocked that we knew all these same people, but we never met each other. You know, Amir was a few years older than I. You know, and going back to that time, you know, enough time has passed now, but, you know, back then, a lot of the ways too that people were getting heavy records was through college radio. Everyone was just, you know, looting college radio.
You're not the only one.
Right,
The only one.
right. You know, and that is the truth. That's how it was. And Amir and I decided that we wanted to make a mix too. We did it first and foremost. I think we just did it for ourselves, and then we decided it wasn't going to have anything to do with tempo. We wanted to group everything together based on the people that were using the samples. So it would be like the beat nut section. It would be that, you know, it was more like that. In retrospect, you know, the first few tapes weren't really technically good to me. You know, I think they showcased fine, but in terms of how, you know, a flow, and if you really listen to the progression of that series, I was like, I'm gonna do it like it needs to flow, you know, it needs to be like a mix, and you can hear that in the progression of, so yeah, we did that. We were stuck on names. We didn't know what to call it. Shout out my boy Richie, who goes by Dean, who is an incredible artist, graffiti writer, first and foremost, I'd say, who's also a music fanatic. You know, we're talking knowing all these people I'm talking about, I still know. And we're talking 30 years now. You know, and these are guys I know from around the way. And he named the series On Track. He came up with it. He did the artwork. He came up, you know, he was all me and him were both always fascinated by trains. That is why the whole thing, and, you know, the graffiti aspect, etc., it all kind of ties in its own way. So that happened. Man, I remember going to Fat Beats. I remember being at my crib. I mean, those first few On Tracks, we recorded directly at my house, straight to a Fisher tape deck. mistakes, everything just raw. Like it was just straight up, just boom, 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 boom. One time there was a electrical explosion in my building, like huge explosion that shut off the power. We were in the middle of recording. You know, that was a different time. Yeah, and Amir was working at Fat Beats, and I remember going to Fat Beats and just sitting there with the tape dupes with the machine, just boom, boom, manually doing these tapes. Amir would put his phone number handwritten on a lot of the tapes, you know, trying to push. Amir really pushed those tapes heavy, and he, you know, through working at Fat Beats, was able to connect the dots, and they started to pick up some momentum, and producers started to, you know, what is this, you know, and then we just kept at it, and they were selling well, they were selling out, and you know, again, shout out to all of our contemporaries, you know, Phil, Soul Man, Jake and Preem, Conman, Ken Sport, Shame, etc. Muro, you know, I mean, these guys, everybody was killing it. Everybody was coming with it, you know, and that was a time when you kind of really had to you shit now is so different. You couldn't fake the funk then, you know. There was no quote content online, whatever. Content was tangible. This was word of mouth. This was like real culture, for lack of a better way to put it. But and again, we didn't really know. I don't think any of us knew. We were just doing our feeling. We were just doing what came natural to us as music fanatics. That ended up turning into various projects that ended up starting with Uncle Junior's Friday Fish Fry. And then it led to being a part of the Kings Up series, which had already been going on with BBE, except they were doing Kings of House, etc. And then, you know, Pete had the vision to do Kings of Digging. You know, to this day, that's not my claim. I'm no king. You know, hence me playing on King of Nothing, you know.
Yeah, it's very nice and humble of you to say that. So for our listeners, right, Amir was one of my early guests and said the same thing, right? Very humble guy. And just to fill in the blanks for everyone listening, there was a bit of a competition, healthy competition between all these great mixtapes. People were, including KON and Amir, were playing breaks for records at the same time of them coming out. It was insane. And Muro from Japan was very, very good. He had a mixtape, King of Digging. So this is hip hop battling, but you guys respected him very much as well. So I think it's just important for everyone to know, because it's hard to know if you were not around at the time. I was a kid just fascinated with all of this. And all of these mixtapes are like a whole era of hip hop people learning about all of this very, very diverse music through this. And that's like my whole life now, right? So it started a lot for me. It's legendary and it's personally a big deal. So I just want to point that out to you while we're talking.
All of that, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I would say respectfully, all of us are black belts.
Yeah.
You know, we all own our craft, I think, to this day. Every one of those people I just mentioned are masterful. You know, and that takes time to build. Muro. I've rocked with Muro in Japan. I've had, you know, just actually one of my most memorable disco sets that I've seen was Muro. And he doesn't speak English, so his manager translates, and I was there on the side, watching him rock, and it was so interesting to see somebody from outside of this country embody, not only have the knowledge, but he knew how to run these records, because it's not just knowing records, it's knowing how to run these records. And I was just like, man, he's just on fire. And then he played a record that I guess you could say I was known for. I comped it, and his manager was like, "Listen, he wants me to tell you he never even knew this record. He learned it from you." So again, I think we all that to say is like we all have a admiration and I think a mutual respect for one another. Maybe in some weird way, it would be like a Wu-Tang Clan where all of us were doing that. And we were all like the members of the Wu, different stuff, different vibes, but all part of this tribe. And I'm proud. I'm super proud that, we all got down with this together, but separate at that time. I mean, Jake Uno, that's the homie. We keep in touch, and I saw Preem last month here in Boston. Yeah, everyone's still we're all at this age now where it's just so funny to be looking back at all this. Like, damn, 30 years.
Yeah.
Whoa. So
everyone you mentioned, including yourself, is a legend of the beat digging game. And it's not only having records, it's skills and ear. I think
Right.
ear by far is the most important in this. And having that taste, right?
Yeah.
And that taste, I learned from that taste. It helped develop my ear and
Right.
many others, right? So I just think it's really important for the people listening to the show. Check out those mixtapes. They were years ago, but I defy anyone to name all those records even right now. Not so easy.
Right. It's funny, like I over the years I've gotten so many emails about track IDs, and again, there was back then no snitching, like there was no lists.
Yeah.
I'd like to say, like, I got a call one time, early 2000s. I got a call, I pick up, like, is this KON? I'm like, yeah, who's this? He's like, it's Denon Porter.
Sick.
I'm like, are you the guy that produced 50 Cent and Eminem? And
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa, what? He's like, I just want to tell you, I'm a huge fan of what you and Amir do. I have all your tapes. I bought all your tapes. And I'm like, how do you know? How did you know about us? How did you even get my number? So he said, well, I was with my boy, JD. I was with Dilla, and we went to a store, and he told me, sight unseen, he said, you need to buy this whole series. And that, obviously, I never had the fortune of meeting Dilla. Amir knew him. All the other homies were homies with him, and so that personally meant a lot to me, that you come to find out something that you create out of nothing has reached so far. So yeah, that's those are the bigger rewards for me anyway.
Yeah, I want to commend you. I mean, I love that story that you shared. Denon Porter, great, very successful, and still underrated.
Right.
Both, right?
For sure.
and Dilla, one of my personal favorites, one of the greatest of all time, changed music.
Yep.
And the fact that he was studying what you were putting out, it's just so cool to hear from you.
Yeah, all spokes on this wheel, you know?
Yeah. I was curious about On Track, and I know that just like you described when you were a kid, you listen to all types of music, right? And you make a wide variety of music. You mentioned your early beginnings in disco. Let's talk about the other phases of your career. When I think of you, maybe that's why I heard of you On Track, but that's not your whole life. You have
Right.
many phases to your life. What happened next in the story for you?
Production wise, I stopped. You know, the whole game changed. I was a club DJ. You know, I had residencies and, you know, and I mean club on some party rock shit, etc. You know, really how to really do parties. The Kings of Digging series on BBE that led to the Off Track series. Amir and I began touring extensively. You know, we had such a blast together, you know, traveling the world together, doing this music thing. And through that, I started to kind of do edits. And I mean edits in the real sense of the word. Just straight up, like not adding, subtracting, rearranging sections, extending sections, no real production. Started to do that, you know, and obviously, again, coming from a disco upbringing and stuff, you know, I was familiar with Danny Cribbett already. I was familiar with a lot of these names on records and, studying, you know, New York records, etc. Club culture. I knew who Larry Levan was and all, and, you know, I was into disco. I mean, fun, you know, to tie it in, first time I met Spinner was in A1. It's probably, I don't know, 96, 97. And I had a Lenny Williams 12-inch in my hand. And I'll never forget, he was like, yo, you like disco too? And I was like, I used to skate. I grew up on it. You know, because we were also into, at that time, library records and European French soundtracks and beats and breaks and all this type shit. And you know, back to the story. I started to get back into production. And I guess you could say, you know, the umbrella of dance music, which encompasses a lot. I found myself feeling rewarded in the same way that I once was with doing beats, quote hip hop beats. I felt now there were no rules again doing dance music. And I kind of just said to myself, this is the roots of all the early hip hop records anyways, all disco stuff. So again, yeah, I found a lot of freedom in that, creatively. And I just started doing more and more. And then that led to remix stuff. I started getting into the multi-track stuff. And just pursuing that avenue of things again. Yeah, then I, you know, 2009, I almost died. I was hospitalized for like a month. That was pretty bad.
Sorry to hear that, brother.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I'm still here, right? So
You look great. If that makes any difference. You look healthy. You look great.
Thank you. But that point, when I got out of that, that's when I felt the power to go into it even more. And I think it was at that time I became more prolific. I started putting out more stuff. I started getting back in it. And I just felt this surge. Um, and that's what ended up happening. Um, you know, I through all the years of doing this stuff with Amir and everything else, just the networking, um, collaborations, um, yeah, I mean that's what it's been, you know. I've been blessed. I've been fortunate. You know.
You described a really culturally rich upbringing, lots of, let's say, advantages art wise, music wise, just exposure. And you also described kind of humble beginnings, right? Your mother was younger. You had some advantages and maybe not others. Now, through your DJing, you have traveled the world extensively.
Yep.
What has traveling as a DJ taught you as a person?
I'd like to say I have a global perspective for sure. It's taught me a lot. It's taught me a lot about life. I think, you know, traveling also by yourself, you know, and I mean like by yourself, going to Beijing, going to Moscow, going to Kazakhstan, going to, you know, most people don't travel by themselves when they go on a vacation. So you're really forced to meet yourself. Whatever is going on in your life, whatever strife, whatever personal issues, they're full front and center. You can't stop thinking about this stuff. You're on a 10-hour, 12-hour flight. You're in a city. You don't know anybody but the promoter. Yeah, I mean, I think it is the true currency. It's wealth. Traveling is wealth. Most people where I'm from don't ever get to leave the block. They don't, you know, no one really travels where I'm from. As far as my family is concerned, I'm the only one who's ever gone anywhere. Um, you know, you could say I definitely beat a lot of statistics for where I'm from. Um, and music is the reason why, music and art. So I'd say I already had a good head on my shoulders, but you know, it's taught me I'm not religious at all. I'm spiritual. And I would say if there was to be a religion, I think music is the true religion. It brings people together in a room that normally might not ever come together. People of different faith, people of different ethnicities, etc. Even if just for that moment, everyone's on the same page. And it's the music, it's the power of music. It is definitely the healing force of the world. I believe that. Um, you know, my travels have taught me too, like, it doesn't matter what you are. People are going to treat you based on what they might think you are on face value. You know, and I mean that coming from the United States, you know, um, there's just been so many times where people assume I'm of this descent, or I'm that, or I'm this. And I've learned that depending on where you are in the world, people are inclined to assume you're this or assume you're that. And that has really taught me a lot. Like, I'm whatever whatever you think I am. It doesn't even matter to me you know what I'm trying to say? Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. And it's taught me that people are going to think what they think. And that's none of my business, you know? Um, I know who I am. You know, I've met myself many times, and that is what travel has really taught me. Our differences might be in effect, but we are so similar in more ways than people could ever imagine. That's what I've really learned, you know. And I've been so blessed for that, you know. I mean, those are lessons that you can't really pay for. You can't go to school for. If you've ever watched Anthony Bourdain, it's relatable in that regard, my experience. So
Your answer says a lot about you. I think it's an incredible story. And in terms of meeting yourself, from my personal reflection, traveling alone, you have dramatic ups and downs.
oh yeah,
You could have the best time of your life and you could feel more alone than ever, waking up somewhere where you don't know anyone and you don't
right,
speak the language. And that's really living.
right,
That's real life.
yeah, for real.
Yeah. 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 All right, brother, we've talked so much about your life. Everyone's favorite section of the show is called Drop a Gem on 'em. I find the best way to get to know music people is to talk music. I'll name people, places, spaces, songs. You tell me what comes to mind. Can be a personal anecdote, a feeling, really anything. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
John Clemmer, Blowing Gold album, Free Soul.
I found that for like $2. I sold it.
Get it again. It's not that hard.
Love it. Great record. Shout out Large Pro. Yeah. Great.
Okay.
It's a good one.
The Gap Band, Early in the Morning.
Man. Goosebumps.
Yeah.
Grew up on that record. To this day, I play that in my sets. This year, I think there was a whole viral moment going on with some young folks in the South doing line dances. Love to see it. Just love to see that. I mean, Charlie Wilson, Gap Band, always, forever. Incredible catalog and just everything about that record I love.
Yeah, that song does something to me. There's something about that frequency, his baritone voice. It's like, it is one of my just favorite songs of all time. Next record, a group you mentioned earlier in our interview, Crown Heights Affair, song Far Out.
Man, and another one. Perfection. You know, perfection. I've been fortunate enough also to get multi-tracks of that. So like, you know, to hear that all separate and just again, goosebumps, mind blowing.
Yeah, it must have been interesting because I really like that song. Maybe it's the copies that I have, but it's a little like together. It's kind of crunchy the way it's mixed, right? And that's part of the magic. It sounds cool, a little bit distorted.
Right.
And it must have been cool to hear that all separated.
Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go back to Tokyo with the other king of digging, DJ Muro. Tell me about that whole trip for you. Was it your first time in Japan? How was it meeting Muro? Did you communicate at all?
Yeah. No, it wasn't my first time when we really connected. I played at the Room in Shibuya, which is Shuya-san. Shout out Shuya, Kyoto Jazz Massive. He put that together. I played the anniversary. I played 2 nights in a row, and one of them was with Muro. I also played another time with him for a Discogs event with Recluse, who's another one of my favorite producers, who also has ties to Boston. Who he works for Roland, Anyway, we all did this gig together, and it was Muro and Nori, which is I think Captain Vinyl or some name like that. But Muro's always just been, you know, the homie. Even though he doesn't speak English and I don't speak Japanese, that barrier, music, we speak music. So, you know, when he had the store, I kicked it at his shop. We kicked it, you know, yeah.
Yeah, I find him a character that I always wanted to interview, and for the reason that you just mentioned, it's very unlikely to happen because
Right,
he doesn't speak English.
right.
Armin van Helden, you don't even know me.
Man, to this day, still goes. Another record, I'm gonna say just perfection. Armand, to me, he's the king of the 1 bar loop, 1 to 2 bar loops. You know, I see him from time to time in Miami. We have mutual friends, etc. Um, just, you know, good dude. Um, Old school kind of OG Boston. Um, when that record came out, it was a smash, and I think, you know, the vocals of Dwayne Harding and the lyrics and stuff. I just think they, you know, I learned making records. It's not about, oh my God, I got the best rapper or the beat. It has to do with the marriage. You know, making records is about mood more than anything else, and um, they locked in for that. I mean, they're so locked in on that record. Um, I mean, I'm not tired of that record. You know, I've heard it a million times.
Yeah, it always comes back in my rotation,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Next record, another artist you mentioned earlier, Tina Marie, song Portuguese Love.
I mean, another record that I had the pleasure of growing up on. I mean, Tina's catalog is. I mean, does Tina have any weak shit? I don't really think so. It's like, you know, and I don't know. You know, I feel like Tina's one of these rare exceptions of an artist who nothing was fake, nothing was contrived. You know, the kind of music she's doing, you kind of have to really come from that. You kind of have to really live that. Um, you know, you can't fake that.
Yeah.
And you know, Tina embodies that. Um, yeah, I mean, Tina Marie all day.
Yeah. I think you said it. Not only her vocal talent, it's the way she felt it and
Yes.
the magic with Rick James. It just took it to another level, and you can't just manufacture that shit.
No way. Right.
Yeah. The System, Don't Disturb This Groove.
Another record I grew up on. You know, that record, Hang the Sign Up on the Door. That video, I mean, I just, you know, when that record came out, yeah, that hit. That was a hitter. And then their other record is You're in My System. I mean, last year, you know, so, you know, I was diagnosed with cancer, with terminal cancer. And that was very difficult. You know, I had to have a bone marrow transplant and go through all this craziness. But before I did that, I took a residency at Dante's in Miami. You know, and you know, I've known Rich for like 30 years. You know, Rich is like my brother, and also I know, you know, the founders, Sven, Rude Boy Sven, Alan, Arturo, these guys. So you know, I ended up taking that, going and doing that. And one night that I'm there, it's actually packed. Turns out, what's his name from the system? The singer. I'm drawing a blank.
I will look it up while you tell the story. How's that?
He was there. So, shout out Devise. Boom. I dropped the system.
Mick Murphy?
Mick Murphy.
Yeah.
Yo, as soon as that comes in, I mix it, just boom, right on the spot. No, just everything was spontaneous. He gets on the mic. What a magic moment. Who would have thought? Little me, who bought that record when it came out, is going to be at a club DJing with cancer, doing this jam like it's a rap jam. And I'm cutting it off at the moments where he's killing, and it was just a moment. And I caught, I had this video I posted on my page, highlight right there. That was a great moment. And again, music has been everything for me. So
I know you mentioned that you said you're unwell right after that. So first, I'm really sorry. And
thanks,
you
yeah.
look great.
Thank
you
you.
look fantastic.
Well, I'm cancer free.
You look fantastic, right? I'm cheering for you. I love that.
Thank you.
And, when you're faced with your mortality, it's just like that magic that you described. He's singing Don't Disturb This Groove, or You Are My System. Like, it just shows you lived. So no one knows what's going to happen tomorrow, but you have certainly led an incredible life of art and music and the world. And I think it's something to just reflect on sometimes.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, I feel honored. I feel blessed for sure. I've made so many musical memories and friends along the way through music. I've got to meet my heroes, and become friends with them. It's taken me to places I never would have imagined, and here I am still in the house that I grew up in on and off. This was my great grandmother's house. This is, where it all began. So yeah, it's just, I guess, full circle, and I'm thankful for it all.
Yeah, there's more to come, brother. I could
Yeah.
tell. Let's keep going. Ed OG. What does that name bring up for you?
Ed, as a Boston legend, Roxbury, be a father to your child. I gotta have it. Ed is underrated. I think Ed is a timeless MC. I think when you go back to that era, 90, 91, 92, we were all young, and he was spitting some very mature, timeless lyrics. No cliche stuff, I think, yeah, Ed is respected by all and any MC in this game, in this industry, worth a grain of salt, for sure.
Yeah. MF Doom, Rhymes Like Dimes.
One of my favorites. Again, another story. I had the honor of one of my very first shows with KMD and Gangstar with my crew.
Crazy.
Yeah. And the promoter, we all ended up sleeping at the promoter's crib. So it was me, my crew, Doom, Zevlov X, aka, and then his brother, Sub Rock, and then Kid Onyx. And I was with all of them kicking it. Rhymes Like Dimes is, also, Bobito's always been the homie. Shout out Bob. Just that whole era, that whole vibe, timeless,
Yeah. In a way, that's one of my favorite Doom songs. And it's because it's so absurd. Like, he's looping a solo
Yes.
and it works perfect. Perfect. And the way Doom is just so loose on the track, he's so comfortable.
I have a side story that ties into that record.
Go ahead.
So I had the honor of kind of hosting and interviewing Greg Fillinganes, who, when you listen to that song and you listen to the original, that whole keyboard solo is Greg.
Oh, crazy.
And, you know, Greg he plays keys on Thriller. He plays, that was Michael Jackson's best friend. He got his start in Stevie Wonder's band. So I get to interview him. I'm playing him multi-tracks of him that he's never even heard in front of a school of Berkeley School of Music students.
Amazing.
And he, you know, I asked him about that record, and he told me, he said, man, you know, Quincy in the studio was no joke. And he told me that Quincy swore a lot, and his nickname was Mouse. Not Quincy's, Greg's. So Greg fell asleep. He went to like this B or C room and went underneath the console. And he said, I was like curled up in a ball underneath this console, knocked out. He said, Quincy came, was like, yo, motherfucker, get the fuck up. It's time to work. He's like telling me verbatim. And he's like, listen, he said he was groggy and everything. He said, yo, man, we need a solo. We need you on this shit right now. Go. That whole thing is what flowed through him. He didn't like it. He was like, I could do it better. And he said that Quincy was like, oh, hell no. Because because that you were asleep, this is the most pure energy that we're going to capture. And that also, you know, again, showed me what a producer isn't just someone who's tapping on a beat machine. It is so much more than that. It's knowing things like that. And that was tying it in with Rhymes Like Dimes, you know?
It kind of makes sense. The feel of it,
Right.
it's all a little late, and that happens on solos, but the feel is very unusual of that solo, and it's almost absurd. And then to rap on it is
Yes.
crazy, and it just works.
Yes.
It works.
You can't stand right there.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about your other projects. The Vision. What comes to mind when I bring that up?
It's bittersweet. I'll just say that.
The single was Heaven, and
Heaven, yeah.
does very well.
Yeah, Heaven blew up. Heaven is what I'm told is a modern day house classic. That record was everywhere. I'm very proud of the work that we did. Without going too much into it all, you know, he and I don't speak. It's been years. But again, you know, the music is the focal point. And I think the music that we made together is some of the best music that either of us has made at all. So I'm very proud of that body of work.
I'm glad to hear it. I mean, things go one way or another in life. You've been in many groups, been a solo, I would say artist, DJ, producer,
Right.
and with groups, these things happen, but I'm glad you could look at it that way.
Right.
Saturday Love.
So that's with my boy Ray, aka Fiorious. Ray, what more can I say about him, man? He's just an angel. One of the best souls I've met through music. Incredible singer, unique voice, super talented songwriter, singer, just an amazing human. I'm just, we met through Defected. We clicked. He knew what to do with my beats, and how to make records. And I guess we just knew how to work with each other. And again, I'm very proud of the music we did together. Sadly, I don't think the label that we signed that project to, not the Fool's Gold. The Fool's Gold single came out first, and that ended up getting synced for a massive Absolute Vodka ad campaign. So that, we kind of did very well with that, even though it didn't pop in other ways.
Yeah.
But then, the rest of the music we did, we signed with another company, but it just didn't make any noise due to the machine. But I think the music speaks for itself, and I think, we're both very proud of it.
I wanted to be sure to talk about all your projects. When it comes to the world and what's popular, those might be more popular than your mixtapes. I have no idea. I just happen to know you with one lens, and I think it's important to show all the sides of you. Next artist, Emilio's, I'll name the record that I love, Bananera. What comes up for you when I bring up this Brazilian legend?
I'm familiar with, but what comes up in general overall is that Brazilian music is my weak point. It's just so much that I don't know. I've been to Brazil several times. Shout out DJ Marky, who's also a national treasure for Brazil, but also he's an avid record collector, and he's taken me to some spots. And thanks to his knowledge of Brazilian music, he's been able to put me up on game. But again, in general, it's endless over there.
It's all relative, brother. I think you know so much about these other genres, and you're such a student of the game that you're used to having full historical context. Well, it is kind of endless and hard to learn about for many reasons. What comes up when we bring up you traveling to Brazil? What were your experiences? How did you enjoy it?
I mean, it's a place I've always wanted to go. And again, it's like, when you sit here and you go through all the things that you've done with music, I'm a kid from the hood. Yeah. It's just like straight up. I went to Brazil. I like multiple times, and I'm there, learning about their culture, meeting some really cool people, finding out that I have fans, people that actually know my records, just all of that, just positive vibes, positive experience,
Yeah. No, I think it's important to reflect on that. I think it's super interesting because you described very humble beginnings. You said everything about it you said was positive.
Right.
But you didn't have all the advantages of the world. You didn't grow up a millionaire, right?
No.
And you've seen the world.
Yeah. No.
I was using that term for effect. You didn't grow up as a millionaire, neither did I. And you've seen the world. And it's even more interesting because you've had these health challenges in the past. They're done now. And it just makes it seem like, man, we got to appreciate how cool that is. That's so fucking amazing.
Yeah, it's nothing short of amazing. That's for certain. I'm so fortunate.
Yeah. More to come. More to come.
Yes, indeed.
Let's take it to the basics. Roy Ayers' Ubiquity, The Memory.
The Memory is a song I discovered after Everybody Loves the Sunshine and after Running Away. Those were the first two that I discovered. The Memory I love. Also fortunate to acquire some of Roy's outtakes and stuff like this. So I have like different versions of it. Which yeah, I mean, I love the chord progression on that record. It's the shit.
Yeah. Roy Ayers comes up on this show all the time. That just happens to be one of my favorites. Andy Bay, Celestial Blues.
Another incredible, unique voice. I'm partial to the Gary Bartz version. But I mean, you can't mistake Andy Bay's voice.
Yeah.
Just killer.
Yeah. Very unusual voice. I love it. I was like, man, this is way out there. Something about this is just great to me. Yeah. Kamasi Washington, Change of the Guard, 2015 album, The Epic.
So I did like a flip of one of the songs off of that. And that made the rounds. So much so that he heard it. And, you know, shout out Natasha Diggs. She told me she was playing it and Kamasi came running over. It was like, what version is this?
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, it's my boy, it's KON. And he just was like, thumbs up. So, you know, again, it's not that any of these songs that I've ever touched needed my touch, but it's nice to know that when I do touch something, the actual artist, it gives it the approval. So,
yeah. That must be extremely validating.
Yeah.
So I usually end off with a more introspective question. What excites you about the future?
That's a good question. I feel like at this stage, you know, I've just been through so much. I've actually been wondering, like, what is exciting anymore? It's like I'm on autopilot. I just keep doing, just doing what I've been doing. But I think, you know, this past month, I got excited about making new music again. So I'd like to tap back into it. I'd like to finish up some of these demos I've started. And do some collaborations with some local artists, some young blood. I wanna make some new records. I wanna you know, with musicians and vocalists. I wanna produce, and that's kind of in the works. So, I mean, Matt, and also the fact that I've been given, you know, a second chance here. You know, I've lost so many people to cancer. So I was kind of programmed already, you know, miracles don't really happen. Well, you're looking at one for real. And I think, you know, in terms of the future, if anything, I'd like, you know, when I decided to share that part of my life publicly, it was to not only get the weight off my shoulders and to not deal with it in silence, but to also connect with others who I can provide a source of strength, maybe through my story. So the future in that, you know, awareness, etc., to just more life, you know, and hope.
I see nothing but more life for you, my friend. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Peace.
All right, man. Peace.